Well, hello everyone. It's like you here to talk to you about. It's like Matthew PC Treasure. It's like talk about. It's like I'm Matt and talk about is like the conversation about PC Treasure is what I had cleaned around. And of course, did some spring cleaning, and then of course did some looking around. But you see right here is I got a calculator right here. I remember when I was in math class, of course, that I remember that it's like when calculator is when computers when PCs were pretty expensive, back in the you say between in 99 and 97, 98, 99 it is, and not too many people, of course, quite a few people had them, but then of course, I used to always think that you really had to be rich in order to be able to own one. But you see right here is with the calculator right here. I used to think that that the computers were pretty expensive back then to the point where it just seemed like at the time that that this right here will be my computer because it's got a few buttons right here. It's like you say before, it's known as like the times tables. If maybe we could think about a mathematical multiplication type problem, is knowing about how long do you think it would take you to save maybe say 600 and 75 or so dollars within about maybe 3 or 400 days or something like that, maybe 2 or 3 years just to save it. And if I remember, I calculated it, knowing about that. I don't know if I really want to wait that kind of amount of time to save a few bucks. It is, but at the time, I found a few, of course, a few. You say receipts it is, and then knowing about, I was just looking around at the receipts that I have, and knowing about it's like, of course, I found more than a dozen, and just knowing about that is that I found quite a few of them that I didn't realize I had later on. That I didn't realize I had so many, and then quite a few of them, of course, were several years ago. I'm talking about more than 5 years ago, and I've seen some receipts. It's like especially whenever I first bought my very first computer. It's over at the store that, of course, went out of business. But this receipt right here, which I'll go ahead and read it, but it's like for the ink, the ink was $7.99, and of course it's like it's like for say with if it's HP or if it's a Macintosh, Mac computers or anything like that, or Dells that you see right here is that the VH the VS 15 the VS 15 that is a computer monitor is a 279.99, and I remember that whenever I went computer shopping, back over there at that computer store, that I can remember that they said that that was quite a bit expensive. That with those those big monitor screens it was, and of course, they say that now. I guess nowadays they have like the flats, and the touch screens and all that stuff. But I remember that they said that those were much more expensive. And then of course the desktop computer, of course, I guess if it's all together about 729, and then the printer was about $70, and then the see the computer printer, see here, 62.99 for all that stuff right there. So including the computer, about 729 for the desktop. So all together, about 1,090, about 1,996 it is right here, including as like totals for non-taxable, and so far as the sales tax it is. But just knowing about, if I were to look at this, is keep on reference about, it's like so far as for the PC Treasure, is knowing about that that I'm just wondering if I still have some of this information, and just knowing about the fact about that, yeah, that you go out and you buy a computer with whatever money that you could collect, and just knowing about that, you look back and just knowing about that, the first experience buying a computer and then taking it home and taking it out of the box, etc., and just knowing about that, yeah, you don't even have the internet going on it. Of course, you don't even have all these other programs and stuff like that on there. But back then, that was whenever Windows XP, of course, was around. But then knowing about the fact that yeah, that you're just thinking about, just like, really, if I get Windows XP or Windows a Takshimo or something like that on this thing, just knowing about kind of a small screen is like you can get something bigger. But other than that, that with computers, with most of them, is knowing about whenever I look at these receipts, and just knowing about how much really that that could be about as much as you would be paying. It's like if you were to make a down payment on a car or something. But other than that, you got the receipt right here, and of course, this is another, of course, another receipt that I found around, of course, also talking about is like what the mail-in rebate it is, and of course, how to submit the offer. But other than that, with all the other detail right here is knowing about is like with the store, like the share is talking about with most of the time with whenever we buy computers that it's like that. I used it mainly a lot of times. It's like for paint networks, and then of course is to it's like get on encyclopedia, had encyclopedia on there, but just knowing about the fact about the money. A lot of times it was like the money was a lot of times was the concern that talking about is like you have a notepad right here. If you were to have like a say notepad, of course use one of those used to say pens like talking about it's like with the telephone. It's like you got one of my old telephone receipts right here is knowing about how much it costs just to operate, knowing about it's like not being charged for all that a few of the other stuff, but then of course you may still get charged at times, whatever calls that you'll be making. But on the other hand too, that knowing about is that with the computer it is that you buy it and then knowing about how what it does and stuff, and quite a few people that may get on there and then they may want to go ahead and try get on the internet. I know for sure, if I can remember right, that like back in 97 and 98 people wanted to get on them, just it's like it's like talking about, I guess, whenever internet access was, you say a big say motion. It's like no, it was is that people were just finding out about it. That may have been back in early 1996 whenever they found out about a few of that stuff, and just knowing about, of course, like with Wi-Fi, and then of course with dial. I think dial-up was the only option at the time or something like that. But anyway, but anyway about that. Talk about buying computers, and then of course there's like a few other things, of course, that cost money, and just knowing about the things I can still use. But just knowing about whenever I look at this stuff, I just think about is that I can remember buying a computer, going to the store, buying a computer, and taking it home, and then of course I of course didn't have everything right away, but I remember that whenever I got the computer that they got on the internet, and of course got that arranged, and then knowing the fact about that that whenever it came time for an upgrade, is they were like, yeah, well, your warranty's expired. Since it's expired, you're going to have to check into whatever computer store that has the newer systems it is. So the way I think about it, I'm like, yeah, you have a computer for about 8.5 years, and you're probably thinking about that, yeah, you probably got your money's worth out of it. Because really, whenever I called, it's like the technician you called, the tech support, it was that knowing about the fact about, that it's time for your new PC, and we no longer support the XP, say X edition, say this, and knowing about the fact that I'm like, yeah, well, the information I could provide to them, of course, was what version of the computer and what version of Windows I had, of course, and more likely that I don't know if they were thinking about that thing still works, or if they were just like, well, you've been you failed to do your shopping 2 years ago or something like that. And a lot of times the people probably say that with the way the technology is going nowadays, and knowing about it's like knowing about between a calculator like this, a calculator like this that can flatten out to maybe like a little skinny little scroll like this, and knowing about that, yeah, just unroll it and roll it back up, and you'll be able to count the times tables and stuff. But other than that, let's talk about what PC treasure it is talking about is like, yeah, that back then I'm like that knowing about that, yeah, that really what can you get for a penny? What can you get for a penny other than it's like you really other than with a phone call that you say maybe pay a little bit, I make a payment on the sales tax, whatever it is. If it's what you saw 10 yen or whatever, that for their 300 or 400, you say baht or yen, that we could probably think about is that yeah, that it's like whatever the things cost, that knowing about, kind of say get your experience about how it works. But I can probably go on stories about that, is knowing about that, yeah, that whenever you buy something and next thing you know you may have to pay for something else or whatever you cost. It's like maybe not everything is all included, but maybe it's like you keep that in mind. It's like you write down on your shirt whatever it is. It's like Tom's like, that's my way of saying is knowing about. It's like keep that in mind, is knowing about after you buy something you may not be able to use it right away because you need something else. But other than that, it's talking about with me, it's like my story about the PC treasure. It's basically talking about that whenever I was a kid, I wanted to save up for a computer it was, and now it just seems like I have a lot of this stuff, and just knowing about the fact about maybe I could get better grades now. It's like knowing about the fact that yeah that the people talked about what can you do on your computer now, and knowing about the computer games and programs that you got on your computer. And I would probably say that people would talk about it quite a bit whenever I was in school. They, besides an iPod Nano, before a lot of that stuff, came on the shelves at the, 3G networks, iPhone 5 or whatever, that a lot of people would more likely, they'll probably say that yeah, that it's like if it was a CD, maybe a record player, whatever it is that they like talking about back in the old days, maybe a rock group, whatever it is. But one of the things that they mainly talked about, other than what you say is the game consoles, was of course was a computer. And they could probably think of it as like that hey, if you don't have a computer, I don't want to be your friend. But on your hand too, we could probably also think about it's like, hey, if you can help me out, if you can help me out, it's like, hey man, it's like I don't know how to touch the buttons on here. It's like it's like I don't know how to work the buttons. It's like, well, now, I tell you one thing, it's like there are a few schools that may be able to teach you a few of the basics, and some of them that may say that, well, you bought it, it's on your hands, or hey, it's your little tool, your little gadget, you deal with it, whatever it is. All you're into to knowing about it's like knowing about it's like we help each other. It's like to learn. It's like the things that it's like knowing about how to get from step to step. Other than that, let's talk about this like that's Matthew's PC treasure.